Hi, I'm Tommy Mester from data36.com, and this is a pretty special episode of the podcast because today I have a guest with me. My guest is Zoltan Prekopcsak, who's the VP of Data Science and Analytics of Prezi, the presentation software company, and he was the VP of Data Science at RapidMiner, the well-known data science and machine learning platform. But today, I won't ask him about the things he does right now, but the things he did in the past. Basically, this episode is about one single question: how did he get his first data science job? Welcome, Zoltan, and thank you for accepting my invitation. And my first question is, what was your first ever data science position?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Tommy. So I wouldn't say I had a position instantly, but I was working on many different projects. So even as a bachelor student, I got interested in recommender systems. So it was around 2005 or 6. So Amazon was already having recommender systems. So it seemed pretty interesting how they are solving it with analyzing the data, the signals from their users. And I was lucky because shortly thereafter, there was a data science, or back then we called it data mining, a competition called the Netflix Prize, where Netflix, the video streaming company, has published a lot of data about their users, how they are rating movies. And they published it, and the goal was to improve their recommendation algorithm by 10%. And the winning team got $1 million as a prize. So it was a pretty interesting for a student to get started with.
But it was a Kaggle competition, right?
I think Kaggle was not around at the time. It was still run by Netflix. So there was a special website, netflixprize.com, and they published it there. Kaggle started a few years later.
But because which year was this?
I think it was 2006.
Oh, okay. So a pretty long time ago. Okay, and how did it go?
I've been working on it for hundreds of hours with fellow students. And even at one night, we believed we won the competition. So we did some internal backtesting. It showed that we improved the recommendation algorithm by 12%. So while uploading the result, we already started distributing the cash. How much goes to which person? And obviously, the uploaded file had the 2% result at the end. So we just made a mistake with backtesting our algorithm. So that was a good lesson that you need to be careful with measuring the performance of your machine learning models.
Nice. And how did you move forward from there? So what was the next step? Because this was your very first step, if I get you right.
Yeah, probably this was my first data science or data mining project. And we basically gave up after 6 months. It was clear that we are not experienced enough in this field to win this competition. So we were participating in other smaller data science competitions. But probably the key next step was that I got a student contract for Kitchen Budapest, which was an innovation lab. And it was basically a scholarship, so I could go there and work with other students on innovative projects. And in the course of 2 or 3 months, we did 3-4 projects which were very data-oriented. So one example would be we created a mobile gesture recognition system. So it was back before the iPhone, so it was Nokia phones. We were capturing the accelerometer sensor signals from the mobile phone, processing it on a nearby laptop, and then pushing back the recognized gesture information to the mobile. So that was one project where we needed to deal with classifying the time series signals. And we had other projects like analyzing a news portal's articles and looking for names, like person names, and creating a big graph out of those people, how they are connected. So if they appear in the same article, they may have something in common. So then we drew a big graph with 1,000 people who were present in those articles.
And was this a paid gig, or was it more like a hobby project or a side project? Or
we did get some scholarship for this innovation lab, but that was like maybe enough to buy some food for you. So it wasn't a proper salary, but it was more for the fun. So it was more of a hobby project. I was still doing the university, my master's during those times. So yeah, I was probably spending 16 hours a day at university and in this innovation lab. So it was a pretty intense period in my life.
uh-huh. Yeah, and just out of curiosity, which platforms or which languages did you use back then? Because I guess this was 2008 or
8 maybe, yeah.
So it was the year when Python 3 was released. I guess not too many data science packages were available back then.
Yeah, so interestingly, my stack was not at all data science oriented. So I did know Java from university. I did some PHP programming and SQL for web development. So that was pretty much my stack. So I haven't used Python back then. It was all Java. And it was not the ideal programming language to do all these projects, but that's what I knew. And whenever I needed to hack something else in Python or some other language, I just learned enough to do it. But I always remained to be more of a Java person.
Okay. And what happened after Kitchen Budapest?
I decided after all these projects, it looked interesting to deal with data science or machine learning. So I started my PhD at the university. So I finished my master's and then started my PhD. And also there, I had plenty of interesting projects. So it wasn't a very well-defined PhD program. I had a lot of flexibility on what projects I'm working on and what data sets I'm trying to analyze. So I probably worked like 10 different domains and fields. So I managed to get some data about how different paprika species are growing under different light conditions. And we try to analyze that if there's any signal on how should they set up the lighting for the paprika so they grow faster and become bigger. So pretty unique projects.
But did you have like a specific big PhD project? Because if I'm not sure about how PhDs work, but if I'm not mistaken, they are like that you have this one big project that you have to finish in 2 years or something like that. Did you have anything like that, like one big goal?
Yeah, I was supposed to have one, but there were just too many interesting other projects popping up and distracting me. So I actually never finished my PhD. But the original topic was based on the gesture recognition idea. So basically doing data science on sensor signals. And I was looking for data sets in that domain and trying to invent new algorithms for that. But it was a pretty lengthy process. Data was not available. So whenever I got other types of data that looked interesting, I just got distracted and worked on that and eventually dropped out from the PhD school.
Okay, so it very feels like that. Back then, at least, you were the guy who discovered everything. So you had many side projects. If you found something interesting, you just jumped on it and you learned what you have to learn to make it work. But when did you get your first full-time job and how did it happen? Because if I'm correct, your first job was in the data science field. Your first full-time job was in the data science field, right?
My first job was part-time, so it wasn't full-time, but it was Secret Sauce Partners. And they actually found me because they were looking for somebody with experience in recommender systems. So my very first project that I started with, the Netflix Prize competition, that experience was interesting for them because they also wanted to build a recommender system to recommend the right fit for online apparel shopping.
And what was the time difference? So because the Netflix Prize project was in 2006 and this was like in
maybe 2009 or 10, so 3-4 years later. So some of my friends knew that I was in kind of data science and working with many different projects, and probably I I shared so many details about how excited I am about this project that they just had it baked into their memories. And then one of them just connected the dots and they have heard about this opportunity.
So your very first project actually turned out to be the first step into the more professional data science field. And
Exactly.
And how did you like this first job? Was it challenging, or have you had to learn new things when you got there? Was it like what you expected before?
Obviously, in every project and in every job, you learn new things. But I typically enjoyed those. And maybe the biggest challenge for people getting into data science is that the task that they need to do is very much undefined. So the task is not to build X or just create something that does Y, but it's more typically have an impact on the users, and it's super loosely defined. So if I need to build a recommender system that recommends the right fit of a specific T-shirt, how should I approach it? I wasn't told how I should approach it. I was pretty young and not much experience, so I needed to explore that. So people who get scared by that kind of flexibility and undefinedness, it's pretty tough to get into data science. But I enjoyed this, and I never liked if people force their opinions on how things should be done on me. So I like the openness of all these projects, and with every project I learned a lot.
But wait, were you the first data scientist at this company, or?
Yes.
Okay, so you haven't had any senior to ask from, or you had to figure out everything by yourself?
Yeah, exactly. So at the university for the PhD program, I did have kind of mentors who were helping me and who I could discuss all the projects with. But at this first part-time job, I didn't have anybody who would have more senior and more experience in data science. I did have the opportunity in many of my projects that to connect with other senior data scientists from other companies, just through the network of the people I was working with. So I could consult people for an hour or two, but I didn't really have like a hands-on person next to me helping me out.
Mm-hmm. And was Stack Overflow a thing?
Oh yeah, Stack Overflow was always a thing. Yeah, or if it wasn't Stack Overflow back then, just Googling everything and trying to figure out was the key way to learn.
Yeah. I mean, just like right now in 2020 as well.
Yeah.
And so this is how you got your first data science job. Well, actually, as it turned out, you had many small data science projects before, like side projects, hobby projects, a little bit bigger projects, a few paid gigs, PhD that you haven't finished after all, and then your full-time job. That wasn't a full-time job after all, but a part-time job. Quite interesting journey. I have only one question left. If you had an advice for aspiring data scientists today, like one advice, what would that be?
Well, based on my whole story, I think the thing that I benefited the most from was working on many diverse side projects. Just jumping into new fields where I had no experience and trying to get a sense of the data, trying to understand it, and trying to produce something that is useful. So that whole experience in each project has taught me a lot, and I learned a lot from those. So I would suggest everybody that do side projects in diverse fields, whatever you are excited and interested about. I mean, open data is everywhere, so you can get data sets in almost every domain. So it should be fairly easy to get started and build something new.
Yeah, definitely easier than back in 2008, right?
Yes, I'm old, I know.
Okay, Zoltan, thanks a lot for being here and sharing your story. It was super exciting and super valuable for everyone listening to this podcast episode and for me as well.
Thanks for the discussion and thanks for having me.
Thank you. And dear listeners, this is the end of this episode. I hope you liked it. If so, please subscribe, leave a rating or a comment. And remember, the best way to get notified about new episodes is always the Data 36 newsletter list. the only place where I really communicate to my audience right now, and you can subscribe to it at data36.com/newsletter. If you do so, you will get access to a lot of free learning materials too, including my free mini course called How to Become a Data Scientist. Thank you for listening. My guest today was Zoltan Prekopcsak, and I'm Tomi Mester from data36.com. Until next time.